What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Undrunken Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney, and I want you to join me as I talk with real people and have super gritty conversations about their journeys to becoming undrunken. So let's go. Dump the drink because it's time to get this party started. What's up, y'all? I am so excited for today's episode. I cannot gush about Katy Saltsman, who is going to be on this episode enough. From the minute I met her, she just is sunshine. And we booty bumped at a conference that she was emceeing, the Empower Her Podcast live event in Denver. And it was just instant friendship from there. And I was so excited when she agreed to come on to the podcast. I just love her energy so much. And I think you will too. Before we get into that though, it is Thursday, December 21st, and Christmas is right around the corner. And the holidays in general, right? New Year's, Hanukkah, all sorts of different holidays depending on your culture and your religious beliefs. And I just really want to give a shout out to anyone who's having a hard time, especially those that have dumped the drink. And maybe this is your first year going through the seasons. This is not an easy time of year for a lot of reasons. For myself, I grew up in a home where the more wonderful a holiday was, the more we had to pay for it, just through, verbal and there was just repercussions to joy where I grew up. So I have worked through that for the most part, but it's still hard. I get activated with certain things, and not drinking. It's easy when you're drinking to just kind of check out and not worry about those things or feel those things. And so if you're struggling, just know, I feel you, and you can do this, and reach out to friends and family that are supportive of your choice to dump the drink and be undrunken, and rely on your community. That is one of the biggest success factors that I hear consistently in interviewing folks, is that it's their community. And check out the new microphone. What's up? I want to sing a song to that, but we'll get there. This whole me introducing the episodes is new, and I just want to give a shout out. You know who you are. Thank you for that feedback. I hope you are all enjoying that and getting to know me a little bit more. But yes, with that, let's jump in to Katy Saltsman and my conversation with her around alcohol. She also has an episode. I will link to it in the show notes. She's just a queen. I don't know how else to describe her. She is amazing. She is a health and business coach, and you're going to want to click on all the links and follow her. And ladies, you're going to want to sign up for some of her programs. I know it's on my 2024 goals list is to enjoy one of her programs. So without further ado, let's jump in.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I wish I could hug you through the screen.
Same. Awesome. It is so good to see you.
You too. Okay, so how are we doing this dance party?
You're gonna surprise me with a song, and we're gonna shake our booties.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah. You are the reason I dance every morning.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
100%.
It might be kind of old school. Are you okay with old school?
I love it. Bring it.
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. If you don't know this song, I'll switch it up.
That's all right.
But you got to let me know.
was so fun.
So fun.
That's better than a cup of coffee.
I know, exactly. That's what people don't understand. I'm like, you don't need coffee. I mean, I'm not against coffee. I love it. You just got to move your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I loved your episode on alcohol. And
Yeah.
I just kind of want to start with thank you for putting that out there and being honest about like, I used to this and now I this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was just such a realistic point of view.
You have to talk about it. That's the thing I've realized is like we're so scared to talk about things or change our mind on things or be judged by people. And it's like, actually, let's just chat and create some human connection and some vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you get any like a lot of feedback on that episode at all?
Yeah, I got a lot of feedback from women saying that they've cut alcohol out of their life or it's something that they've realized that isn't feeling very good for them, especially me being in the health industry and helping women have their healthiest and happiest hormones and a healthy metabolism and also like a healthy mental and emotional health and relationship with your body. Alcohol can really impact that. And that was one of the bigger reasons that I cut it out outside of hormones is that I just wasn't feeling good emotionally. It took me out for like 3 days after I would drink and it wasn't serving me anymore.
Yeah. Well, it takes somewhere I've learned a lot of facts about alcohol, but somewhere I learned that it takes about 80 hours for it to totally process out of your body.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that explains a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of times before that 80 hours is up, we've had another drink. Yeah.
And then you're just perpetuating that cycle. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. What do you think after doing that episode, what was the biggest takeaway for you? Because I think you're a lot like I am, where you're pretty organic with your episodes. Like you probably have
Yeah.
like some notes, but then it just kind of comes.
Yeah, and I'm not really a stop and go chop it up with like podcast episodes because I think I want the women on the other end to feel like they're my friends. And if I was having a conversation with a friend and like messed up in the story or it went a different direction, I wouldn't like start back from the beginning or edit it out. I would just keep going.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a natural flow with it. And I think the biggest lesson I learned from that is not to be scared to change your opinion on things
Mhm.
and not to be scared to share that. As a coach in the health industry, I very much went from a macro and a weight loss coach and anything fits to more focused on mental and emotional health and hormones and metabolism. So I call it high level health, right? You have the surface level-y, like let me like have a thigh gap or whatever it is that women are working towards, right? The surface level things. And then I think as you grow more into your health and you start to get really involved in it, you want more higher level health. You don't just care about the number on the scale, you care about a healthy metabolism long term, right? You don't just care about cutting out carbs, you care about your hormone health and your fertility. And back in the day, I would always say like alcohol isn't a bad thing. It can fit. You can have alcohol and still lose weight because I was so physical, weight loss focused, which served a purpose at the time. Sometimes I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I wish I could go back and help the clients I helped in a different way. But that was a season in my business. And for so long, I just kept that going of like, you can set boundaries with alcohol and it can still serve you in your health journey. But then I transitioned into this phase where I kind of geek out on studies and I go a lot deeper with health. And when it comes to scientific evidence, there is zero scientific evidence that it does anything positive physically for us or mentally for us. So, yes, can you have a healthy relationship with alcohol and keep it in and still feel healthy? That might be the case for some people. But in most cases, the women I worked with are burned out. They're not feeling good in their body. They're exhausted mentally. They haven't set boundaries. They feel like their body is broken and working against them. And so, honestly, for 99% of women I work with, I would say, like, it is going to be very hard to reach your goals with alcohol in the picture.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you said something about, you went from doing that moderate coaching to just saying like it doesn't have a place.
Mm,
And you even touched on the whole glass of wine a day. So many
yeah.
people are like, oh, but it's good for you. And I'm like,
Yes.
actually. And
Y-
then you talked about that, and I was like,
Mm.
Somebody's having this conversation.
Yes. What's so wild is, and it's rhetoric that I heard from my mom because I think they like use it as an excuse to have a glass of wine every single day. Which look, at this point, I love my mom. She is who she is. And if a glass of wine a day makes her happy in her mid 70s, live your best life. That is that is fine. I'm not going to go there with you. But the studies, we say it like when we're younger, the study is actually women over the age of 55. So when you have already gone through menopause and your hormones are no longer functioning like they were, we're past the age of fertility, we're past perimenopause, like we have gone through full-blown menopause, it saw a slight uptick in cardiovascular health. Like that's it. And that study was actually done so long ago. And there's so many more studies that have come out since. But what's crazy about any studies or science in the health industry is that a lot of it's pulled from one, just men, or two, pulled from a really long time ago. And we're still holding on to that, even though there are studies recently that say something very different.
Yeah, and the studies about alcohol now, I mean, they're saying it's linked to cancer, it's linked to heart disease.
Yeah.
That I mean, you've said mental health, anxiety, sleep
Yes.
disorders, weight
It's
disorders.
wild the amount of studies that are linked to alcohol just being, I mean, it's a toxin, right? But it's a toxin in our body that we have normalized and we have socialized, but it doesn't mean that it's good for you personally. And I think that's the question that you always come back to. And what's crazy is you just said is it's like a direct link to cancer. And that right there should be enough to like scare you away. But if you think about cigarettes, like if you look on the carton of cigarettes, there are warnings
Yeah.
everywhere. Like we know that that is like not great for our health. And I feel like that's coming with alcohol. It just hasn't caught up yet.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. I think that, and you may or may not experience this, but I think that when you don't drink socially, there's a weird vibe that you get. There's a little bit of shade that people throw at you. And I find that fascinating because if I walked into a room of smokers and then left because I didn't want to be around the smoke, nobody would think anything of it,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. What I think is so crazy is when I think about growing up, like we used to go into restaurants where people were just smoking, like we would just sit there huffing it in.
Like Denny's,
Which is
coffee and cigarettes everywhere.
yeah, which like if I not that I've gone into a casino at all, but I remember the last time I went into a casino, I was like, this is still allowed, like inside. This is so wild. And you feel like a cigarette leaving.
Oh, it
And
just
yeah,
smells and it's
yeah,
permeating your
I
clothes. Oh,
know. I
yeah.
know. And so I really do think that is coming with alcohol. But you're right. It's something that we've normalized so much that we do socially. And like, look, I get it can loosen you up a little bit. It can make you more comfortable in a situation. But for me, like, I want to show up as me. I don't
Yeah.
want to have a substance to help me loosen up around people or to help me be myself or be more outgoing. If I'm struggling with that, I actually want to learn how to do that on my own. And that
Yeah.
might be a personal opinion, but I'm always like, I want to go through the process of learning and the process of growth. And I still I have no issues saying that, like, hey, I don't drink. But when I go out, I'll still get like soda water with 2 limes because
Yeah.
people don't ask questions then. And like sometimes I just don't even want to have the energy exchange of like answering that question because
Hmm.
it just doesn't matter to me. And when you have a soda water with 2 limes, nobody asks you anything.
Not a thing. Because
Yeah.
they assume, oh, you're just drinking. I get that. I get kombucha. My friend owns a restaurant and they've
Yeah.
got this beautiful kombucha on tap.
Oh,
And I love it because they serve it to you in a pint glass and it just looks like you're drinking a beer and nobody asks any questions.
yeah.
In
I feel like I'm
fact, like,
craving kombucha now that you're saying
it's
that.
so good. It is so good. If you're ever in Oregon, you gotta go to Happy Mountain Kombucha.
Oh, it sounds amazing.
It's like they got like it's peach and all these and it's so light. Like,
Yeah,
some kombuchas are really like heavy.
heavy. Yeah.
No, not this stuff. This stuff is so good. Oh, yeah. I'm like, so you'll appreciate this. Dry January, right? I'm like, well, I always loved those challenges. Like, oh, okay, I'll take a month off this. I'm like, well, I can't do dry January because I don't drink alcohol. So I'm gonna do sugar free. So dry January off of sugar.
Okay.
So
Wow.
that
Good
means
for
no
you.
kombucha. Yeah,
Yeah, that's hard. No processed sugars, I'm guessing. Like fruit still allowed. Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Like I've always been I've always hated dieting,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I've always come back to, since I was like 18, doing this what I call like the Garden of Eden diet, right? Where it's like if it's not grown or like caught, right? Like I don't
Yeah.
want to eat it, because processed foods, man, those just mess me up. They always have.
Yeah.
They're so
Yeah.
delicious sometimes.
They're addicting, right? And processed foods aren't always a bad thing, but we can have like too much of anything is not a great thing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm always preaching moderation with that. But whenever anyone comes to me doing a challenge like this, I always ask them like the reason behind it. And if the
Yeah.
reason is weight loss, I'm always like, I don't love that. But if the reason is like just to feel better, have more energy, have more clarity, like those are awesome reasons to do challenges.
Yeah. For me, I think it's, I really want to pay attention. Where is all that sugar sneaking in?
Yeah.
Right? Because for the longest time with alcohol, right? Like, that's just like pouring sugar into your body.
Oh gosh.
Alcohol, I mean,
Yeah.
you could probably speak to this way more eloquently than I can, but your body
Yeah.
just processes alcohol straight into
Mhm.
sugar.
Yeah, absolutely. And it
Yeah.
can really screw up with your blood sugar. It can screw with your insulin. What people don't realize is a lot of times the hangover the next day isn't from alcohol. It's from your blood sugar coming so high and then dipping so low. You feel like shit. Right. And then you eat food and your blood sugar raises again and you like kind of feel good, but you're like a little bit nauseous. And then your body's also trying to like detox toxins out of your body and you're
Yeah.
dehydrated and it's a whole mess. But when it comes to blood sugar, this is actually a fun fact, and I might be going off on a tangent here.
I love it.
But when alcohol is present in your body's number one goal is to metabolize that. So, in order to do that, it shuts down all other metabolic functions because it's a toxin in your body. So, what happens is we're usually pairing alcohol with eating, right? Eating not great food, especially if we're drinking a lot or we're eating a lot the next day because we drank the night before. So when alcohol is present in your body, just like you said, it can take up to 80 hours to fully be out. I would say your metabolic function probably wouldn't shut down for as long, but that means it shuts down the functions of processing protein, carbs, and fats in your body, which is why you wake up the next day, you feel bloated and sluggish, and your body's way more likely to store those because if it can't break it down, it's got to do something with it. Right. So it just stores it
Yeah.
on our body. And so I think it's wild that people don't understand how much alcohol can impact like a metabolic function or just your body's day to day, your digestive system, especially if we're having it multiple times a week.
Wow. That's like truth bombs for everybody
Yeah.
right there. Like, so I know you talked about, and I'm referring to your episode a lot because I just think it like covered so much beautiful ground.
Yeah.
And I'm going to link to it in the show notes. But you talked about like you were never really a big partier, a big drinker.
Mhm.
But how long has it been that you've really been like, alcohol's just not part of what I got going on, and
Yeah.
referring people?
Yeah. So it's been about 2.5 years, I would say. And in that 2.5 years, there have been times where I've maybe had a drink or two. But in September of 2021, I left a pretty abusive relationship. I drove across the country to a city where I knew nobody. I drove from Detroit to Denver, and being in the health industry, like that's always been my go-to is I've had my health, I have workouts, like that was sort of my sanity. But I went through a period of such high stress on my body that it started shutting down. So I was 35 years old. I completely lost my cycle, which is really scary when you're 35, especially for
Yeah.
me. I'm wanting to have kids. I guess I was 34 at the time. Completely lost my cycle. My hair started falling out.
Mm.
I went to my doctor. I was physically producing no progesterone. And she was like, your body is so far from being safe. And I just went on this like quest to just try my best to get my body to feel safe and to really focus in limiting stressors. And when you go through hard times in your life, sometimes you just want to grab a wine or whatever it might be. And I was committed to not doing that because when you are dealing with any sort of down regulation with your thyroid or with your sex hormones, we're always looking at stress and we're always looking at blood sugar. So cortisol and insulin. And those are two things that alcohol really, really has a huge impact on. And it's a trickle down effect. It's a domino effect. So if we have cortisol and insulin that are impacted, it's impacting our thyroid, it's impacting our adrenals, it's impacting our sex hormones, which alcohol wasn't the reason for me losing my cycle. Clearly, it was a lot of stressors in my life, but that was a really motivating reason for me to cut it out. So I not only cut that out, but I stopped working out, which was very, very difficult for me because I realized how much working out was my therapy, but I had to limit stressors on my body. I actually had to add in food. I went from like having like a 6-pack to where I physically had to put on 10 to 15 pounds to get my cycle back, which I did, which was amazing. And it took me through this whole healing process of finding who I am outside of all these clutches, right? Outside of, the trauma that I went through, outside of the abuse, outside of anything I had ever been through in my life or what anyone told me to be. I had 3 to 6 months where I got to find out who I was again with just being with me, just sitting with myself, which I think not a lot of people do. And I really got to figure out what are the things that I want in life, what makes me feel good. And I was at a point where I just wasn't willing to add in things that didn't make me feel good anymore. And alcohol was one of those. And I realized after 6 months of not having it, like, I didn't want to go back. I don't want to casually drink. I don't want to go out and have drinks. Like, I want to go out for coffee. I want to get to know who you are. I want to know what lights you up in life. Like, those are the things that felt so good to me. And I just kept going with it.
Dance parties, hikes.
Dance parties. Yes, I learned how to, I went to a beginner hip hop dance course and in my mid 30s, which is so humbling, by the way. Like, you've never been more humbled in your life than going to that.
Yeah.
But I just kept going. I learned myself in a different way, and it was so amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine that it changed your business a lot.
It did.
Yeah.
If you knew my business before I moved to Denver, I mean, I always had a really great business, right? Like, I'm always trying to impact women's health. Like, I want to change the conversation around women's health. And now I'm tapping into business coaching and changing the conversation for businesses, which is amazing. But I had maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3,000 followers when I moved. And when I also moved, I did something pretty scary as I hit record on my podcast, Crying Burns Calories. And I started talking about it because up until then, they had seen this perfect cookie cutter life, smile on my face. And I hit record and I was like, I got a divorce and I am really struggling and I'm moving across the country to a city where I know nobody and I'm scared and I feel like my life is falling apart, but I'm going to figure this out and you're going to figure it out with me. And since then, what's happened in the last 2 years is like nothing short of amazing. Business has tripled. I have, I've gone from like 2,000 to 40,000 followers. I hit number 15 in my podcast last week in nutrition on Apple Podcasts. Like, it is unreal what has happened. One of the scariest things to show that I was imperfect is actually what's created the most amazing connections and cultivated so much community for women to feel seen and heard.
Yeah. Yes. I love your podcast. And I love the name, Crying Burns Calories. Where did you come up with that name?
I have never taken myself that seriously in life. Like, through everything that I've been through, I always have a little bit of like a sarcastic, tone with things. And I just loved it. I'm a crier too. I'm not scared to cry and like show my emotions. And so I've always had this joke about crying, like burning calories. And I just thought, what a perfect name, because my biggest thing with the podcast is I want women to know that, their health isn't just physical, right? And so, like, to me, that was a little bit like, we're not just focusing on calories. And also, I don't want women to feel like they have to be perfect in life. Like, so I don't want my podcast name to be like, the condition, like I'm going to say conditioned and confident, because that was actually a program that I had in my like old school days of coaching. But I didn't want this really buttoned up nutrition podcast because I wanted it to kind of feel messy.
Yeah.
Because that's what the podcast started with, was imperfection. And I wanted to show that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know your life is absolutely amazing. I met your husband when he was still your fiance.
Yes,
And
you did.
I mean, the look on his face watching you on stage was priceless. He just like total adoration.
Oh,
On stage, you're running these, like the fitness class that you did,
Yeah.
fire,
Oh,
you
thank
know? I
you.
mean, did you ever think that you were going to be there doing something like that?
Never,
Yeah.
never. I didn't at all. And I actually taught the year before at Keisha's event as well, Empower Her. And she had asked me to do it. And I originally said no because I hadn't taught in over a year and a half. One, because I had to stop working out, but two, because I was like the person that I was with was so heavily tied into the fitness industry. And there were so many triggers for me, right? It was finding my way in the fitness and health industry without having any ties to sort of my past.
Mm.
And I was like, Keisha, I don't know that I'm ready. I don't think I'm ready. I hadn't taught a class in like a year and a half. And she was like, you're ready and you're going to do it. And so I got on stage and again, just like really messy, I said, this is my first time back on stage in a year and a half after leaving this situation. And like everyone cheered for me. And it was just this really cool moment. And since then, I've just continued to like teach classes and have fun and have the same energy. And I got to teach again this year, which was amazing.
Well, and you were MC, which I don't think was originally the plan, but you killed it. It was
No.
so much fun, and I do MC work, so of course I was like, "Who
That's
is
right.
this?"
That's right. I
Yeah.
know when you said that, I was like, oh, I don't know how I did. I've never emceed before,
Ugh.
but the way things went down, she was like, I need an MC and you're perfect for it. And so we decided that I was going to MC and empower her, and she was going to marry me and Max a couple weeks after. And so she got ordained and married Max and I, and
With
here we
her
are.
cute belly. Oh my gosh.
I know, 38 weeks pregnant. That was pretty risky.
She, and then she ended up like she was like a week or two past due.
Yeah, I know. I know. Crazy.
Like all year, like I don't know what's going to be going on stage, you know. She's
So
a
true.
crack. Okay. So you go through this big health reset, which I think that's really what it was a reset. And I want to pause real quick, and I just want to say I really appreciate staying in an industry and a community when you have past ties.
Yeah.
That takes bravery. I've done
Yeah.
that myself, and it was not easy. I've never done it before, and then I did, and it was like the best thing I could have done.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's a different kind of strength when you find yourself outside of past highs. And I noticed like when I had took a break from working out, I was like, I'm healed. And then like I found myself like sobbing on the floor of a gym, just being like ultra triggered by certain things.
mm,
It was a lot to work through, but that's why I started doing things like dance. And you'll see me jump roping a lot on my stories, probably to like early 2000s, late 90s hip hop. Like that's just my vibe. And that for me was a way more fun form of fitness. And it was something that I had never really been in touch with before, because before it was very strength training based and
yeah,
fitness classes based. So I started figuring out the own things that I loved, which I still love strength training, right? It's just who I am as a human. I love feeling strong. But dance, jump rope, and kettlebells were three aspects of fitness that he didn't hold over me. And so, like,
yes,
I've become a pro at those. Like, I love doing those. They're probably my top three, not because they don't have anything tied to him, but because I learned those on my own and I went
yeah,
through that process on my own. And that's like really just affirming and it's growth.
yeah. Well, and I will say kettlebells, I don't know that there's a more empowering fitness tool
Right?
than throwing those bells around. I mean, they're like a cannonball with a suitcase handle on
I
them, and you get to
know.
just swing them. And oh,
I
yes,
know.
yes.
I have a membership and I did a kettle because I just got my kettlebell 1 and 2 certification. And I decided to do this like beginner kettlebell class and they loved it. They were like, I've never known how to use kettlebells before and now I do. And it was really
Yes.
empowering.
Yeah. Where did you get your certification through? We're totally squirreling, everybody.
No,
Sorry,
you're
not
allowed to
sorry.
squirrel. Okay,
Yeah.
this is wild. So my personal training is through NASM. So a lot like National Academy of Sports Medicine, a lot of my certs will be through there. But this was a company that like NASM took their CEUs, which is what you have to do every year with like, you need a certain amount of those to recertify. it was a company based in Australia, like a fitness company. So like all of the videos were like these Australian guys with accents, which wasn't that hard to watch, let's be honest. So I feel like it's called Fitness Education Online, something along those lines, but it was an Australian based company that NASM accepted their education credit. So I did it through them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I love my bells. I call it thing 1 and thing 2.
Yes,
I have a set of
exactly.
12s.
Oh, good for you. I got you.
Yes.
You see all mine back here.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So 2.5 years, you're not drinking. I know I love that you own that you're not afraid to have a drink. And I
Mhm.
know that, like, I just want to disclaim, like, that's not for everyone. Like
Mhm.
some of the people that I've talked to as guests, certainly, I would even put myself in that category. There's no moderation for me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I'm an all in. Like I'm like alcohol's around. I'm a pro. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna have 7 drinks and
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd
But
be
I
in the
love.
hospital. Even when I did drink, I was a lightweight. If I would have like a couple of drinks, like it would take me out.
Yeah, no, so you got married. I know you said you had a drink, maybe two. You didn't even remember. You were like, I don't even know because it wasn't the focus. And I
Yes.
think that's a big trick that,
Mhm.
I love giving people like tactical tips, right? And I think that's one thing is like, if the people, if the environment, if the setting is focused on alcohol
Mhm.
and you're trying to not drink, probably a good thing to step away from that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. What was crazy at my wedding is the bartender kept coming over to me and she was like, "My job is to make sure the bride has a drink the whole night." And I'm like, I'm not even thinking about it. Like I could care less. I was dancing, I was socializing. I mean, I was doing way more dancing than, probably most brides do, but we had a really small wedding. So we
Yeah.
had 30 people. It was just our families and like a very couple of close friends. I think there was 31 people with Max and I. So again, very small. So we were able to like be in the moment and dance and create all these memories. And
Yeah.
like having a drink was the last thing on my mind, which I think is such a cool place to be where you can like be present where your feet are with the people, be who you are fully without something like without you having to have something.
Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to
Yeah.
be right there, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
So this is a very funny story. Again, I've never really had an issue with alcohol, but probably the most alcohol I maybe have consumed in my life over an extended period of time was my first wedding day.
Mm.
My ex-husband was a big drinker and partier, Canadian. It's kind of in their culture, right? Where they just like drink and party and late nights and music and he was way more of a partier than I was. And my wedding, my first wedding, not this one, my first wedding, I was the only one in the entire place to get cut off. That's how bad it was. They cut the bride off. They told my dad, like they told me, and I was like, what? That's crazy. Why would you cut the bride off? And my dad was like, Katie, you've had enough.
Yeah.
The only one for my first wedding to get cut off was the bride, which if the bride's getting cut off when like we're paying the bill, that says a lot.
Yeah.
That also probably should have been my sign where I knew I wasn't making the right decision. Just probably like
Mm.
you did on your wedding day too. Internally it's not the right decision. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where it was.
Yeah. Uh, okay. So I already know in social settings what you drink because we've been in social settings and we've talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but what resources would you recommend besides your podcast and my podcast?
Yeah.
What like books, what other podcasts would you recommend to people who are choosing this as a way of life, who are choosing to be undrunken?
Okay. Can I squirrel off from books and podcasts?
Please.
My best advice is find people around you that are also not drinking because that's where you're going to find your connection. Yes, there are connections in podcasts and books, and those can be great resources, but we are women and we want to be seen and we want to be heard and we want to hug, just like you and I were like, we wish we could hug each other on the other side of the screen. Like we need connection and we need
Yeah.
people in our life that understand that and can build that up versus bring us down and make us feel less than for not drinking.
Yeah.
One of the best things I did was moving cities and I found community that had the same interests in me. I put myself out there. I always say like I went on like almost like these like friend dates with girls and like went on coffee dates to be like, is this person for me? Are they not for me? I got to find my community in a way that I never had before. And I found my community at 35 years old, which is wildly different than having the same friends that you have had since you're 12, 13 or high school, which look, I still have those friends and I love them. But I also think that a lot of those friends were not on the same growth path as me.
Yeah.
And a lot of them brought me down in a different direction I didn't want. So I can love them and I can still be there for them, but I can also set boundaries. And I'm very protective of my energy, right? Like I love my community here. I pour into them. So I think the best thing is I would get uncomfortable, get out of your comfort zone, build a new community and a new support system. There are so many females out there, so females, males, whatever, that are in the same position as you, that want the same things as you in life, and they will support you in this, and you will feel seen and heard and be able to have some of the best memories you've ever had in your life.
Absolutely. I think it's so different to intentionally choose your circle as opposed to just be in one.
That's such a good way to put it. I love it. You need to write that down. You need to coin that. That needs to be a post.
Yeah. It's, and I think like so many people, when they talk about not drinking, it all does, it's so tied to intention, right?
Mhm.
You have to intend to not drink. It's easy to just drink. I think it's harder to not drink.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, what is one lesson alcohol taught you that you would share with everybody?
That I wouldn't share
That you
with
would
every
share?
oh, that I would share.
I mean, if
Um,
you want to get dirty and say something you
yeah,
wouldn't
no.
normally share, that's fine too. Bring out some skeletons in that closet,
I'm
Katie.
not proud of some of the things I did while I was drinking, especially when I was younger, like the 18-year-old, my sister was at
Oh,
Central, like that just wasn't a great time for me.
oh, yeah.
You
We
know,
could go. We don't need to go down that rabbit
no,
hole. Yeah.
you know what, some things we actually do need to stuff down. Some things we don't need to move through. I think alcohol has taught me that I love who I am without it.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really cool place to be, is I don't need it to have fun. We don't need it to have a dance party, right? We
Right.
kicked off this podcast dancing. Most people would need to be 3 or 4 drinks in to be able to dance at all.
Oh, for sure. That's one of the questions I love to ask people is like, what is something that you do that would normally be associated with needing a drink? And
Dance.
I'm like, there is so much. I'm like, let's sing some karaoke. Let's go dancing.
Yeah.
Like, I will be dancing on tables.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think you
I'll
want me
get
to
cut
sing
off
here.
sober.
Yeah. There you go. Karaoke, I love to do it, but I don't think people love to listen to me.
Oh, see, you would love it. Up here, there's a place where you actually get to rent a room. So it's just you and your friends.
Beautiful.
So much fun. I may or may not have a karaoke machine in my car right now.
That's amazing. I can see it. Oh.
Oh my goodness. Uh, what would you say to younger you about
Mm.
alcohol?
Ooh. Um, Probably that's a really great question. That it doesn't make you any more worthy. It doesn't make you cooler. It doesn't make you seen more. I used to think it was really cool to like go out and drink, and I felt like, oh, like let's get sillier, like talk about not remembering things. And now I think it's actually really cool to just be present and remember things. And I would probably tell her, because honestly, I did it for more of a social status than anything. Because again, I've never really loved it.
Yeah.
That you don't need that.
I love that we have this belief that,
Mm.
drinking, it's cool. It's what the cool kids do. And I'm
Yeah.
like, at this point in my life, I look at people when they're drunk and I'm like, you are so not cool.
So not cool. Like it's messy. There are some, I'm not a big Facebook person, but sometimes I go on Facebook and I'm like, how are people from my high school still posting things that we would do probably when we were 18 years old,
Oh my
but they're
gosh.
still wrapped up in that, right? We think it's cool. We're told it's cool. And when you don't realize how uncool it is till you're out of it and you're like, whoa, like outside looking in.
Yeah, well, and let's just be real. We talked about this briefly, but aren't you glad like Facebook and TikTok and all that wasn't around when we were younger?
No idea. I would have gone
Oh,
viral in the worst kind of ways.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Uh,
What is one question you wish I'd asked, and how would you answer it?
that is a really hard question. Wow. One question I wish you would have asked. Um, I love the conversation of, and I don't, again, this could be squirreling, but I love the conversation of like finding who we are outside of what society told us we should be. And I think so often we use clutches like maybe alcohol, or for some people it might be drugs, or for some people it's just wearing different masks, right? Because we are told life should look a certain way, and we should act a certain way and be a certain way, and our body should look a certain way, which drives me crazy, right? I think the best thing we can do is break out of the box, but I think so often that's why we go to things because of our self-worth and our self-confidence, and we don't love who we are fully.
Mm.
So I don't even know that I wish you would ask that, but I think it's such an important conversation to have. And something I want women to know is that being themselves fully and owning who they are and breaking away from who society has told them they should be, their parents, church, whatever, however you grew up, and just being you, the most authentic version, is the best thing you can give the world.
Yes. Oh, that gave me like all the feels. That was, I love that.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
I want to do quick fire.
Okay.
So I love to do this on the wheel of life. There are 7 spokes in the model of the wheel of life that I use, and I'd love to hear a sentence or two or a squirrel on each area and how being undrunken's affected that.
Okay. Are you
All
going to
right.
tell me them? Do I have to know
Yes,
them?
yes,
I
yes,
don't.
yes. You
Okay.
ready?
Yeah.
Okay. How has being undrunken affected work?
Oh my gosh. There's so much more clarity for me. Like, especially being in the health industry, I always felt like a little bit of an imposter when I would
Mm,
have drinks, and it's finding this balance between this, like, you feel like you have to be perfect all the time. You can totally be imperfect, but also finding things that actually feel good for your body. And it didn't feel good when I was drinking, and also a health coach trying to teach women to be their best self. They worked against each other.
getting up at 6 a.m. to do a training session hungover. That sounds so fun.
Terrible,
Oh,
right?
man.
Chugging pre-workout and aminos, like, it's not a good life to
Oh,
live.
no, no. How has being undrunken affected money?
Oh, I mean, this is an easy one. It saves so much money, so much money. Because for me, I'm a huge foodie. It's actually one of the reasons I got into the health and fitness industry, because I love food. So like alcohol always went hand in hand with food, which, like, if you want to skyrocket your bill, put those two together.
You have a pairing.
Yeah, yeah. Also, it's allowed like a lot of freedom with finances to where I can invest that back into my business and creating more impacts, which is what my goal is to do.
Yes, yes. How has being undrunken affected your love life?
Massively. Max actually doesn't drink either, which is fantastic. So we
Yeah.
just live this life where we feel great. Like, we have no interest in that being our weekends. We find fun in other ways, and to be able to have a relationship where we both don't drink and it's not important. It's night and day from my
Yes,
last one.
I love that.
Yeah.
How has being undrunken affected family?
This is a great question because I'm not sure. I lead a very different life than my family does. And they might be in the category where they would probably, judge along the lines of if I said, like, hey, I don't drink, or I'm not drinking. And I don't even really make it a conversation. I guess they don't ask. Most of my family does drink. I wouldn't say they have like issues with it, but they're like big time, like, casual drinkers. So I don't know if it's really impacted that. I think it's allowed me to be more present with them,
Mm,
which I think is really important, because at family get-togethers, I'm so present with my nieces and my nephews and pouring into them, and like drinking is the last thing on my mind.
yeah. How has being undrunken affected spirituality?
Way more connected to myself.
Yeah.
Just going through that whole season where I had to pull back from everything. I had never pulled back the curtains and sat with myself or sat with my emotions. I grew up where you put a smile on your face and you say everything's okay. And that's what I did for most of my life. And going through that season where I didn't have alcohol, I didn't have working out, I had me, and I had healing me and fixing me and finding me. And I've never felt more connected, mind, body, soul in my life.
How's being undrunken affected friends?
I have the best relationships with friends now, which is so cool. I go back home and it's very much, again, I love my friends back home, but they're very much like, hey, like, what bar are we going out to get a drink? And here it's, we go for walks in the sun, we go out for coffee, we go to, there's like this women's like networking group that you go to that's coffee and co-working, or a networking space. And there's a big whiteboard and we're like building out dreams. The conversation is just different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like you answered this one with spirituality, but I got to ask it. How has being undrunken affected self?
I would say it's probably the same conversation. Confidence. I've never had this confidence before. I've always been so self-conscious my entire life. Even when I had a six pack and was a trainer and was like ripped muscles, like I was still so self-conscious because I thought my body was my worth, right? I had never really got to know myself outside of like, hey, how much can I deadlift or bicep curl, which like only goes so far. And I've actually been able to get to know myself and build confidence that has nothing to do with that. And that's what's amazing.
I love that. And I got to share with you. So, I'm not big on resolutions, but I
Yeah.
love to review my year and set some
Yeah.
intentions for the next year. And losing weight has never been a good focus for me. It's just I've
Mhm.
never succeeded at it when I
Yeah.
set that as a goal. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to lose anything. I want to gain confidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Not focusing on what you're losing, but focusing on what you're gaining. Yeah, that's such
That's
a good
like
way to
my
look at it.
jam right now.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is such, and so I will say this through and through, but when I went through that season of my life 2.5 years ago, I realized I was so focused and so worried about what I was going to lose, right? Losing the husband that made six figures, losing what people were going to think of me, like walking away from this life and like actually talking about the things that I had went through or been through. I was so scared and focused on what I was going to lose that I wasn't focused on what I was going to gain. And what's
Mm.
crazy is I gained the ability to build the most amazing life. And I would do like, I would have everything happen to me over again. I would never change a thing through everything because of that. It creates so much more opportunity. So I just love that you're focusing on that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Katie, like, how can people find you? It's
Yes.
like, give all the deets, the website, the handles, throw it out.
Yeah. So I hang out mostly on Instagram. It's Katy Saltsman is my IG handle. I have a podcast again called Crying Burns Calories. It's one of my favorite platforms. I do 2 episodes a week. So my Friday episodes are a little bit more in depth. My Tuesday episodes are like under 10 minutes. I call them my hype. So really digestible episodes. Would be the top 2 places you can find me. Send me a DM, send me an email. I am the human that answers on the other side. I don't have a bot answering for me or anything. It will always be me. And I love when you reach out.
I love that I get voice messages from you. You have got to teach me how to do this.
Oh my gosh. You'll probably never get a text from me. It's always voice message.
Oh, I love it because it's like I get to hang out with you for like a
Yeah.
moment. Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
Katie, thank you so, so much. Like, this has just been like so much fun. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't feel like I needed to, like, okay, I gotta prep. Who is this person? Nope,
Yeah.
it's Katie. We're gonna hang out. We're
Oh,
gonna have fun.
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to sharing more with you as we continue to explore being undrunken together with friends. I hope the Undrunken Podcast is helpful and inspiring to all of you out there. So if you liked this episode, please send it to a friend and help share these stories with more people.